Joe, I don't want to say you guys were on vacation this week, but what a weird week. You go and play 40 games in 41 days, and then you have 2 days off in the same week in between that Rockies series. But how much did you guys really need those days?
Well, I think it was important just for our guys to physically rest, but it's the quirks of the schedule when you're playing, teams on the West Coast 2-2. And to me, we got to get rid of it. It's too hard. It's one thing if you're doing that on the East Coast and you can go back to back, but when you're on the West Coast, Colorado's on the West, it's just too hard physically.
Do you ever wonder what are they thinking at times when they make the schedule?
I mean, sometimes, and we weren't supposed to play 40 and 41 days. We had to play on an off day, but it just makes it really difficult.
And you look at the teams that you played, you were just in Colorado, you were just in Minnesota, they came back, so they see you as soon after as you do, so you can make some adjustments as a team, but they have the opportunity to make those adjustments as well. So is it an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think it's an advantage for the hitters, a disadvantage for the pitchers, especially when you face a club the second time, because you wonder, do I have to make changes, or what I did last time to get them out, is that going to work? Do I have to do different patterns? And I think sometimes you can outthink yourself. One
thing that's kind of stood out to me over the last week plus when you're playing these teams over again is the fact that the back end of your bullpen is quite set.
Yes.
Twins bullpen, not so much. They have a little bit of work to do.
Well, when you lose your closer in Glenn Perkins, it makes it much more difficult because you have to back everybody up, and then guys are throwing innings maybe they're not accustomed to. And injuries are hard to overcome in the bullpen. Really, really difficult, especially when it's the back end.
When you look at the guys in your back end, they're so dominant. It's almost like you expect them to strike out every guy. Those are the fans' expectations. If they allow a hit, everyone's kind of taken aback.
Yes.
Are you taken aback at all, even though they're not allowing runs, just a hit?
Yeah, sometimes when they give up a couple hits in an inning, you're a little bit surprised, or if they struggle in an inning, you're really surprised. I mean, they are that good, and they've been a big plus for us. And you get a win Friday night where they give you 3 scoreless innings. You get a win Saturday afternoon, they give you 3 scoreless. They're really good.
When you look at Chapman, and Friday night in particular, he had dominant stuff as always, but his fastball was up there consistently. A guy throwing 102, 103 miles an hour. To be able to see it every day, is it different? Does it look different than you thought it would look?
No, I'm getting kind of accustomed to it, but I think you saw a little attitude because I think it was on Saturday he gave up the back-to-back homers to Escobar and Suzuki, and I think he had a little something to prove, and he brought a little extra on Friday night.
It did seem like there was a little bit of extra adrenaline, but then you look at Saturday, you use him and maybe didn't have that high fastball, still 100 miles an hour, but not 103. It seemed like he had to rely on his other stuff maybe a little bit more.
He did. I thought he mixed a little bit more. He threw some sliders. I think he threw a changeup as well, and he's got 3 pitches, but obviously his number 1 pitch is his fastball, and when it's 102, 103, good luck.
Have you changed the way you kind of want to manage those guys? Because originally you had said you'd prefer to not have to use them all in the same day. If you could rest a guy, that's an ideal situation. But knowing that Chapman could go 3 days in a row and wants to go a lot of days
5,
in a row,
6.
yeah, does that change the way you think about managing them?
It changes the way I manage Chapman, but it doesn't change the way I manage the other 2, because my thought is you got to win today. Don't worry about tomorrow, because you may not be in that situation. If you try to save one and you don't use him in a close game and you end up blowing that lead and you lose that game, you're going to be upset with yourself. So you worry about today.
We'll move to the starting rotation, and we'll talk a little bit about CC Sabathia. He is having an unbelievable year for the most part. Last time out, though, not quite as sharp as he had been in times past.
He wasn't. He had an extra day rest, and I've always said CC's thrived on work. I mean, he's one of the few pitchers you don't ever think that you have to give an extra day rest, and he was on such a roll. I mean, he was bound to have somewhat of a tougher start. He turned his ankle in the 3rd inning, backing up home plate on the ball that Blackman hit. I think it was 2-0 at that point. And then I didn't think he was quite the same. And he should not miss a start. He said he feels good, so we'll have to watch it carefully.
What do you think his presence means to this team in the clubhouse?
A lot, because it's a guy that we're used to counting on. And I think when you feel that you can count on Big CC, it gives a good feeling in the clubhouse.
You look at Chase Headley and the start of the season he has had offensively. To see him come up with a big at-bat, how do you think that makes him feel?
We're really happy for him because he means so much to this team. I mean, he's important in the clubhouse. He's so close to all the guys. And he went through as bad a first month as guys could go through. And I think he's hit close to 300 the last 40, 45 games. So he's really turned it around, and we need his bat.
Well, you had Headley with that big hit. You also had Starlin Castro coming up with a huge hit. With the amount of hits he has already in his young career, would you believe that that was the first time that he hit a walk-off home?
Well, I mean, you got to think, how many opportunities do you really get to do it? But yeah, I was a little bit shocked. You know, he has over 1,000 hits. He got there very quickly. He's only 26 years old, and in my mind, I thought, that's his first walk-off hit, but it was his first walk-off home run, which, kind of changed. Well, maybe it's not so surprising.
Yeah. And just watching him play every day, did you learn anything about him this season that maybe you didn't know because he's playing in the National League and you don't get to see him every day?
Well, you realize how much he loves to play the game. He never wants a day off. And, maybe we pushed him a little hard in May, and I tried to give him a day off the other day, and he wants to play every day. And in this 17-day stretch, I'm going to give him a day off to make sure that he stays strong.
It's funny, I was talking to him the other day, and I said, if you weren't playing baseball, what would you be doing? His dad is a big spear fisherman. He told me he would be a spear fisherman. And I said,
it's an interesting profession.
Hand-eye coordination,
yes.
I would think you'd probably be pretty good at that.
And I'm sure he did it as a kid, and I'm sure he learned the trade from his father, and maybe it helped him.
One thing we do want to get to, Mark Teixeira hadn't played in a game since June 3rd. He made his comeback on Saturday. You talked about holding your breath, not knowing what's going to happen with this cartilage, but if you can keep him healthy and keep him in that lineup, what would that mean to this team?
Well, I think it's important because it's the middle of the order who's a switch hitter and plays great defense. So I think it's important. I think we're going to have to manage him a little bit different than before. Probably going to have to give him a few more days off, and we're going to have to watch the knee and how he's running.